Currently we are in Onomichi, about to cycle the Shimanami Bike Trail through some of the islands through here. And after that little bit of time in Kyoto, I kind of got pretty sick of carrying around my big camera bag. So for this trip, I'm just taking the Ricoh GR3 in hopes we can get some good shots whilst we're on this bike trip. But first, we need to get some bikes. The Shimanami Bike Trail is serviced by several bike stations throughout the island network. The first being in Onomichi. And it's a short walk from the Onomichi station. You can reserve bikes online or just get lucky on the day. And once you have your bike, you can make your way to the wharf and await for your ferry crossing. The short hop over to the first island will only set you back a measly 100 yen. So straight off the ferry onto Mukashima Island. I believe that's the first island we're on today. And so far it looks pretty straightforward. It looks like we're just following these blue chevrons that they have all the way across the road, and hopefully for the whole trail we'll make it super, super easy. Just randomly got handed an orange by a man on the side of the road, as if we're in like the Tour de France or something. So this bike trail primarily kind of follows the coastline of these islands. So we're coming across lots of beautiful little beaches, but at the moment the sun's quite high in the sky and there's a lot of glare on the ocean itself. And that's kind of one downside of this little Ricoh, is I can't put any filters on it. I don't have a polarizer for it. So a lot of these shots aren't working all that brilliantly. You have to be a bit clever about it, try and block out some of that glare, or hope the clouds cover the sun. And I mean, it's pretty sunny today, which is great for cycling. We've had a lot of rain on our trip to Japan, so we're very happy the sun is out, but maybe not the best for pictures on this trip, but much better cycling conditions. So the first viewpoint here didn't really work for an image, but down the road I found this shelter with a gentleman enjoying the view whilst on his phone. The discreet package of the GR3 allowed me to take a couple of shots unnoticed, using the shelter to frame subjects and hide some of that glare coming from the sun and the ocean. I always find it takes a little bit of time to get your eye in with the Ricoh. I'm so used to having lots of different lenses and lots of different options, but I definitely take more pictures with it, which is really cool. And I always forget that a lot of the time when I look at the pictures on the camera, they actually look pretty rubbish, but once you get them home, the files are so good that you can edit them really nicely, and once you color grade them, they can end up looking really nice. But I've just spotted this kind of red house here, this little alleyway in between, with the vending machine next to it. It's a nice little scene. Ideally, I'd wait until somebody just kind of maybe cycled through or walked out through this gap here in the kind of little spot of light in between the two buildings. However, instead, I've got a little volunteer here. So on the second island here, we decided to take a little bit of a detour off the recommended route and come on to the intermediate route. I think it's intermediate because there was a small hill just as we started, but apart from that, it follows the coast a little bit more. So that's been a lot more scenic and a lot nicer. We kind of went inland a little bit and then turned around and came back to the coast. And as you can tell, it's definitely getting pretty windy, but luckily we chose to rent some e-assist pedal bikes. So we've got a little bit of battery power helping us through this headwind. I'm by no means a cyclist, so I'm quite happy to have the assist for the day or two. A lot of these islands are maybe a little bit more industrious than I expected, but to be honest, from a photographic standpoint, I'm quite enjoying the kind of Japanese industrial aesthetic. There's something about it, especially the slightly more aged or stained buildings with the the Japanese typography on them. Definitely doing a relatively dangerous amount of taking pictures whilst riding my bike, but luckily I can just about ride no-handed. I love the freedom of this type of photography, and the more I do it, the more it grows on me. With a simpler camera setup, I can capture fleeting moments and just tell the story of the day. Like this series of images of the bridge, the view, and Brooke on her bike really represent the trip to me. These are moments that I might have missed had I been locked in on getting landscape shots with a larger camera setup. As we approached our home for the night, we jumped off the bikes and set off on foot to explore Ikuchi Island. A worthy stop to wander around the grounds of Kusanji Temple and the Hill of Hope. As the sun set, it was a great opportunity to get some images of the marble sculptures, as well as that distinctive yellow bridge, and of course, the docks in the town. So last night we stayed over on the third island on the bike trail here. And just starting off again this morning, we were riding past somewhere called Sunset Beach, and you see the whole road is kind of lined with these palm trees, which is, I suppose, something you don't really associate with Japan, but yeah, it has almost like a Miami type vibe. So definitely one thing with shooting with the Ricoh is, like I said, I take a lot more pictures. You know, I find myself really kind of trying to tell the story of an event or documenting a trip, rather than just going for that kind of hero shot that I normally would with landscapes, which is a really fun way of shooting actually. You're really trying to kind of capture moments, capture how different things line up, and just kind of be really vigilant whilst you're cycling. And it makes kind of visiting a place a bit more interesting as well, because you are constantly looking for those slightly more unique opportunities where, you know, landscapes might align, or you get some natural framing, or just something's happening that you want to capture with your lens. But yeah, super fun way of shooting, kind of restricting yourself, getting rid of all the lenses and all the fancy bits and accessories, and just taking a more basic camera with you. Shooting more freely helps you notice more, like these boats perfectly coming into a natural frame, or the way the road markings here match the colour of the crates stacked behind, or the way this car sits square with the door of its owner's house, both painted in a similar tone. You can be much more spontaneous and capture cyclists as they whiz past the window, or notice how these two chairs mirror the mountain range they're facing, or grab a picture of Brooke as she enjoys the view as she eats some ice cream. Sometimes at the time, these types of images don't feel like they're worth taking, and the amount of effort required to set up a camera and take them seems like a bit of a waste of time. A small, fast camera like the GR3 changes that mindset, and it's just so much fun to take the picture. The Shimanami Bike Trail is famous for its citrus, bridges, paths and overpasses that weave in and out and pass over the islands and wrap between the landscape. Telling the story of these islands means capturing all of those things together. And although the views of the islands themselves are fantastic, they alone don't tell the whole story. So I made a point of capturing the other elements, like the concrete structures weaving in between the lush foliage. Some of my favourite images are ones that combine those man-made elements, the wild landscape and Brooke on her bike. So on the islands they do go pretty hard on the citrus. If you go into the gift shops, there's citrus everything, like orange flavoured crisps, orange flavoured everything you can think of. But of course we've had to stop and grab ourselves a lovely little lemon muffin. One thing I always enjoy about the Ricoh as well is how quickly the camera starts up, and you can turn it on and take a picture within probably a second or maybe less than a second. So I've got it right now, I've got it in my little basket just down here in front of me. So I can easily just reach into my basket, grab it, pick it up, take a shot, all within, yeah, probably under a second. So it's really useful for trips like this, especially whilst I'm cycling around and just taking pictures as I see them. We're getting towards some of the last islands now, and the trail comes inland a little bit, so it's relatively urbanised and we've lost that coastal view, but what I'm looking for is kind of little bits of colour contrast against the buildings in the background. So we're getting some beautiful rusty oranges against the kind of green foliage behind, or even little blue benches sat on the side of the road with the, again, the forest behind it, which can make for some interesting images. All the way throughout Japan, you've got these kind of road markings on the ground here. Now, I'll just show you here. So these road markings that you get pretty much on any road, they probably just mean something really boring like stop or give way or something, but I think they make for a really nice little foreground. So on this little scene here, we're right by the coast now, we've got the mountains in the background and I've got these little bit of Japanese symbol on the road as well. I'm just trying to combine all three of those into a little image here before we cross our final bridge, which is this guy here, which is the biggest bridge on the trip. It's a 6-kilometre bridge that actually goes over the top of some of the islands by the looks of things. So it is very windy coming across this final bridge onto our final island, but we do have some pretty nice views just over my right shoulder there and some beautiful islands out in the distance. It's so windy and we're riding head on into the wind. It's draining my battery pretty quick on this e-bike. I've got 15% left, but probably still a good 10 kilometers to cycle. And without the battery, this bike is just gonna become a bit of a dead weight to cycle. So we'll see what happens. So we made it back to Imabari with about 10% battery left, so just enough to get us here. But it was a great little trip. Hopefully some of those pictures turned out okay. Let me know what you think of those in the comments. And if you want any more info on this bike trail or you want to do it yourself, feel free to ask any questions in the comments below. But thank you so much for watching.